our parents teach us how to feel. Children are incredibly sensitive to how their parents deal with emotions. They might not have been any direct communication that you shouldn't feel certain feelings, but you might have picked up on the fact that some were more acceptable than others. You might have learnt to repress your feelings because your parents didn't show their feelings or talk about emotions much. Your parents were always encouraging you to be happy and think positively. Your mum was very anxious and easily upset. You felt she was too fragile to upset further. Your father was very sensitive to criticism. So he interpreted your tantrums as personal attacks that made him give you the silent treatment. You had a loud and dominating younger sibling, and your parents didn't have space for two problem children, so you learnt that being smiley and quiet got you more love and attention. Bad things happened but were never talked about. Everything was pushed under the carpet. You had to look after your younger siblings, even though you were still a child yourself. Or you were bullied in school, taught to man up and be strong, otherwise you'd be seen as weak. In these situations, over time, we learn that our natural feelings of sadness, anger, envy, and hatred will stop us from receiving love. Whilst it's very normal to feel annoyed or upset with our parents, it might not feel safe to show these feelings because we need their love and attention to survive. This is where things start to go wrong for our mental health. The beliefs stored in our unconscious mind were created when we were children and first learning about the world. We developed them based on the things that kept us safe when we were young. We might have learned that when we cry, adults get angry and tell us to stop. So crying became risky. Maybe we were laughed at when we did a presentation in school. So we learned that public speaking isn't safe because it makes us feel excluded and humiliated. Maybe our parents weren't very good at talking about feelings, so they shut down when we tried to say how we felt, which was scary. You might not be consciously aware of any of this. You might find you just feel very uncomfortable when you have to give a talk at work, or when someone forces you into a conversation about feelings. All these lessons about what's safe and what's not create limiting beliefs that are stored in our unconscious and provide a compass for our adult lives without us realizing. We might believe we aren't good enough, so we sabotage our new job opportunity. Maybe we don't believe we're worthy of love, so we push away people who treat us well in favor of those who treat us badly. Maybe we believe it isn't safe for other people to be angry at us, so we live our lives doing everything we can not to upset people. The internal saboteur. Self-sabotage often comes from the inner critic we all have, which is normally formed from the negative judgments of others and society. The psychoanalyst Ronald Fairbairn called this our internal saboteur. The saboteur is trying to protect us from being shamed or rejected by others. It might have started off as a protector that we needed to survive threatening situations when we were younger. But as an adult, the saboteur tends to do more harm than good because the threats are no longer there. The saboteur part keeps reminding us of all the things we've done wrong, catastrophizes about the future, avoids certain situations, ruins relationships and opportunities. It's not actively trying to make our lives miserable. It's trying to keep us from being hurt in the ways we've been hurt before. But the very thing that once kept us safe is now the cause of our suffering and inertia. Self-sabotage is a signpost that there's something going on in your unconscious that's calling the shots. Rather than blaming yourself, try to get curious about what's going on. Other examples of self-sabotage. What's happening? You really want to start a new exercise regime, but you never make it to the gym. What might be happening underneath? Deep down, you might not believe you deserve to take care of yourself, or you don't like feeling uncomfortable, or you're afraid to be bad at something, so you don't try. What's happening? You say you want to be more open, but swerve every emotional conversation. What might be happening underneath? Maybe you're very afraid of being vulnerable. What's happening? You say you're unhappy in your job, but find reasons why you can't leave or mess up your job opportunities. What might be happening underneath? Happiness or having the thing you want feels scary because it might get taken away. There is safety in staying with something familiar, even if it's making you miserable, and danger in leaving and trying something new and unknown. Rather than thinking of this behavior as something that's ruining things for us, maybe we can think of it as something that is trying to help us. It's just got a warped understanding of what help is. Exercise. Think of feelings you don't tend to feel. Maybe you never get angry or haven't cried in years. What was the culture around that feeling in your family? Did your caregivers ever show their feelings? Now think of any feelings you're not familiar with at all. Were they shown in your family? What response might you have got if you showed that feeling? Were there any consequences? For instance, would someone get upset or encourage you to feel more positively? What's wrong with keeping things in? If we avoid talking or thinking about the things that have happened to us, it keeps us mentally stuck. A friend described this to me as taking a bunch of dirty, wet clothes and shoving them in a cupboard because you don't want to deal with them. In a way, they're dealt with because they're out of sight. But they're festering in there, growing moldy and stinky as they sit there. The smell permeating your surroundings, just as your unprocessed feelings permeate your life. You might not want to take them out and wash them. It might be painful and difficult to deal with them. But ultimately, you need to deal with the mess to stop it from getting worse. For the people hearing this thinking, I feel everything. If anything, I have too many feelings. I'm not pushing anything down. It may sound strange, but even you are probably keeping things down without realizing. It's not just feelings in the unconscious, but also thoughts and memories. Too much feeling is usually about not being able to soothe yourself and needing other people to regulate your feelings for you. I'll cover this more in Chapter 2, Anxiety, but please know that just because you're feeling a lot, it doesn't mean you aren't also avoiding things. Not necessarily intentionally, of course. Things that happen when you avoid things. You have lots of physical health issues, such as constant flus and colds. You struggle to relax. You feel numb, tired, and depressed. You see yourself as a pretty chilled person, but then find yourself overreacting or blowing up at small things. You have low self-esteem. You have many racing thoughts, often feeling very anxious, but unable to stop worrying. You're constantly distracted by TV, drinking, overeating, working. You don't like being alone with your thoughts. You don't often cry or get angry. You suffer with addiction. You create rituals to avoid feelings. You tend to self-sabotage or engage with self-destructive behaviors. You feel lonely even when with people, as if no one really knows you. You can't be in the moment and often have brain fog and feel absent-minded. It's important to know that most of the time we are not aware that we're pushing feelings down. It all happens outside of our control. Alva has no idea that she's terrified and angry. She just gets the urge to stare at her phone or play Candy Crush. I see many people who suffer with no awareness that they're repressing anything. I also see people who aren't even aware of the extent to which they are suffering. Some of you may be listening to this and thinking, but there's nothing really wrong. My life is lovely. My childhood was great. I just have some low-level anxiety, I'm overworked and underpaid, have a mild addiction to social media and wine, keep getting ghosted, and there's this voice inside my head that keeps telling me what a mess I am. Apart from that, I'm all good. A friend once told me he has 100% mental health. At the time, he was also a borderline alcoholic with severe insomnia who was unable to maintain a romantic relationship. What was interesting to me was that he didn't connect any of these things to his mental health or even his psychology. Many people think that mental health refers to specific disorders such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. However, we all have our mental health to look after, and a lot of the symptoms that let us know something isn't quite right can be far more subtle. Here is a list of things I would categorize as being related to the mind. Biting your fingernails, poor sleep, obsessing about a person you've only been on one date with, gut problems, work stress, cheating on partners, chronic fatigue, shouting at your child and then feeling guilty, overthinking, random headaches, overeating, impotence. You might recognize some of these things in yourself as you're listening to this. Don't be alarmed. This doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you're human. We all have our own mental health in the same way that we all have our own physical health. As we go through the common problems we all face in the following chapters, I will ask you to suspend any skepticism and instead of insisting you're fine, try to think about some of the experiences and emotions that might be coming up for you from below the surface. Tips to understand what's going on under the surface. Number 1, get curious. Reflect on any thoughts, images, or memories that come into your mind, even if they seem completely unrelated or weird. These kind of thoughts are often coming from the unconscious. By noticing any themes or patterns that come up, you can spot clues as to what might be going on inside. Try not to judge yourself or dismiss thoughts that feel irrelevant. Often, these are the very ones with the most meaning. I encourage you to write them down as you go. Number 2, understand. Think back to your past. Try to remember what it was like for you as a child and any particularly difficult memories that come up. To understand the root of our suffering, we have to go backwards to where it started. How were you taught to handle your feelings? What role did you take on in your family? Where did you learn to behave in the way you do? Keep remembering as you listen. The past and how it shows up in the present is the key to self-awareness. Number 3, feel. Pay attention to your body. Our minds might not be aware of the things we're keeping down, but our bodies often are. Feelings are physical sensations, so try to notice anything going on in your body as you listen and give space to anything that comes up. Sometimes, if you're feeling stressed or uncomfortable, stopping to work out why and simply naming the feeling can help you feel a little better, even without doing anything about it. Chapter 1, Depression. Why do I feel down? Everyone knows George as a happy person.